Hi. Thank you for attending today's reading. Let's begin. My class got our 6th grade teacher fired when I was in grade 6. My teacher treated the students horribly, to the point where a few students actually switched schools. She threw a textbook at a kid, yelled at kids, called us names, made students cry, etc. Once during a fire drill I was stuck behind a couple other students that were moving slowly and she shoved me and yelled, "Move." After coming back from spring break she was gone and an investigation was launched with all the students invited to come in and explain what had happened. It turns out that her husband was the superintendent of the district and had been throwing out complaints about our teacher. One of the parents went directly to the school board and complained, setting everything in motion. Fast forward 2 years and I'm in middle school and my homeroom teacher is actually the old superintendent, husband of my 6th grade teacher. He was one of the sweetest teachers I'd ever had and everyone loved him. So it was kind of weird for those of us who had been in his wife's class. One day he was talking about how he was once the superintendent and due to some complications, he chose to step down into teaching again, but it was okay because he loved teaching. Everyone that had been in my grade 6 class just shared knowing glances and carried on. End of story. Next story. My girlfriend dies every day. I'm trapped in the worst day of my life and I can't get out of it. Every day I know my girlfriend is going to die and no matter what I do the end result is that she dies. Each morning I wake up to do a quick assessment of myself then of my long-term girlfriend Kathy and we both appear fine. However, the day before she always ends up killed in some unforeseeable manner. I have tried every approach from telling her in the morning that something horrible will happen to her that day to telling her nothing and either which way she dies by the end of the day. Her dying has happened so many times that we might literally be 100 years old but we literally haven't aged a day past 29. The worst part is that she might have a small flicker of remembrance from the previous days. However, on the other hand, I remember vividly each and every of the 100 years of daily horror show rituals of Kathy being killed. There was even one day where we forced a bank manager to lock us both inside its bank safe and due to the lack of oxygen Kathy died and I only passed out. I sometimes wonder if I'm the one who is being punished for being subjected to her daily deaths. In a way I don't want tomorrow to come because then she'll really be gone, so every day I live like it's her last. There's no alarm clock in our room, so the only thing that usually wakes us up is the sun or the sound of a car whizzing by our house. After I assess the both of us to make sure that we're alive, then I get that immediate thought on how Kathy is going to die today. It's a shame I have to think like this, but when something has happened like clockwork for so long I can't be naive to the fact. This morning I wonder if I should change my game plan to escape her death. For whatever reason March 18th had been the date and we can't move forward from it. The 18th is an even day which isn't really synonymous with anything special, so I don't understand why this date was chosen. Watching someone you love die a peaceful death is heartbreaking, but watching her die violently is heartbreaking and traumatic. I've set every booby trap in the house possible to try to stop a would-be assailant, but they always manage to get to her or the booby traps wound up killing her. So this morning I just look at her and think, how is this going to be any different from any other day? She's only half awake and she has no idea that this is her last day. Based on the years we were born, we're only 29 years old, but because of this never-ending day we're really 129 years old. The oddest part about this whole thing is that death doesn't want me, and I'm not even sure if it wants Kathy. Maybe there's a glitch or something where death changed its mind on Kathy, but it can't reverse its course. Regardless, I'm stuck in this horrible parallel universe where I remember her dying every day. I had already sent out SOS messages on every social media platform, and the only thing that would happen is that I would get arrested for conspiracy to attempt murder, and later that day I would learn that she died, and the next day would start all over again. March 18th is also a Thursday morning, and eventually I'll convince her to skip work. I think today we'll do nothing but just lie in bed all day. There has been instances where she has been killed at 8:30 a.m., so I'm not guaranteed a full day with her. As she wakes up, she says, "Good morning, hun." I respond, "Good morning, honey." She says, "Aren't you going to get ready for work?" Quote. I respond, "No, we should both just take off of work today." She says, "I can't, I have this important meeting at 10 a.m. that I have to attend." After doing this routine for 100 years, I tell her, "Please reschedule the meeting and just stay here." She reluctantly agrees, and we do nothing more than just talk. Yesterday to her is March 17th, but yesterday to me was March 18th, where she got hit by a car. I block out those thoughts and just look into her eyes. She looks so innocent and pure, and I question why whatever controls this universe would do such a horrible things to her each and every day. I continue to look into her eyes, and she blushes. She asks me what I'm looking at, and I tell her the most beautiful creature on this earth. She giggles and tells me to stop. The poor thing has only known pain and tragedy for nearly her whole life. She was adopted from an orphanage in Chechnya to a good-willed American household, but her adopted father died when she was 6, and her adopted mother turned to alcoholism. Kathy's childhood was cold from constant bullying from other kids, and she felt isolated because she was an only child. So as I look into her eyes, I think, how could someone go through so much and still be so nice to me? We continue our small talk, and I entertain any desire she wants, including marriage. When we met when we were 24, and I made it perfectly clear that I never wanted kids, but I would get married. So we talked and talked about getting married, and she joked that I needed to propose to her, and I responded I would, but it needed to be a surprise. I entertained every wedding idea she could ever imagine. Nothing was too expensive for her. I had already proposed to her and took her to City Hall close to 50 years ago, so I know this will have no bearings on her living or dying or tomorrow coming or going. But I just like to see her smile. I like to see her face light up. I like to think that maybe this day will be different. I ask her what she wants to eat, and she jokingly says waffles with real maple syrup from the French restaurant in Philadelphia. I say sure and get on the phone. She looks at me completely confused when I bargain with the hostess to deliver it to our house for $200. She tells me I'm crazy, and I tell her that I love her though. I have the worst case of PTSD known to man from watching Kathy die for 100 years straight, but I've learned to block it out each day. There was a year where I would just hide in my pillow and say there's no sense she's going to die anyways, but not anymore. Now I just try to look at it as a good or bad dream depending on my mindset. So we continue to talk, and I steer her away from any trivial worries. We even talk about the basketball game tonight, where I could recite every single player's moves. I really just want her to be happy, just in case tomorrow becomes March 19th and she's dead. In a way, this would be her hospice without the morphine, and today I'm not going to think of any type of elaborate ruse to try to prevent the inevitable of her being killed, because whatever Happens will happen. This day really does feel special. Maybe I finally learned something over the years, and maybe today will finally end and become the 19th. We even start doing guess what song this is from the 1990s and early 2000s. Laughter can be so contagious, and I'm glad I never lost the ability to laugh. I hear a knock at the door and I tell her that breakfast must be here, which makes her smile. I go to the door and pay the young lad the agreed $200. She stays in bed and continues to eat while we joke around and have fun. She asks me, "Why do you love me so much?" Quote. I respond, "Because you're so beautiful." Quote. She says, "Oh, that's so sweet," and giggles. "It's not because of my constant worrying or my 2010 Honda Civic I drive." Quote. I jokingly respond, "Your Civic is definitely a turn-on, but it's just you that I like." As she turns to tell me something, in her face goes blank. Then she slumps over into her pillow and starts to have convulsions. I immediately called 911 and they rushed over. The paramedics asked me if she had any history of a seizure disorder or drug use or anything similar. I told them no, and they rushed her to the hospital. Later on that day, the cause of death was listed as cyanide poisoning, and I questioned every person at the restaurant to try to figure out why. But no one fessed up, and like every other day, eventually I automatically passed out no later than midnight to wake up again on March 18. As senseless as yesterday was, I had to forget about it because today was a brand new day. I did everything the same as yesterday regarding what I said to Kathy and missing work. We talked about our wedding and I even proposed to her. Every day was unique, and this day was going to be unique because when she said yes to my proposal, and she got on top of me and was just so overtaken with glee. We continued to fool around and neither of us reached for protection, which either of us would have done for the last 100 years. We both got caught up in the moment and we just threw caution in the wind. The rest of the morning we did nothing but laid down in bed together. I had no motivation to see her get hit by a car or shot or even stabbed, so we did nothing but just laid down in bed. Though I tried the whole fasting thing over 100 times already. The waffle thing was just still fresh on my mind, and I convinced her not to eat anything. So we did absolutely nothing all day but make stupid noises at each other and play mindless guessing games. I was amazed that we had made it to 8 p.m., but I remembered an instance where it was 11:52 p.m. and she fell off the bed and hit her head and died. So I knew at any moment death was going to show its ugly face one way or another, and I just hope it's the quick kind where I don't watch her have a seizure for a half hour or suffocate for her last breath of air. Hopefully, someone will come into the room with a gun, just shoot her in the head, and hopefully she won't even see it coming. Like the waffle poisoning incident and the countless assassins. I never know who pays those people to carry out those deeds, or is it something that was just written by whoever created this universe and decided to change their mind without properly pressing the undo button. Regardless, we finished watching the basketball game and it's now 10:30 p.m. We are both wide awake and she brings up tomorrow, which I've learned to just say yes to whatever she says. We do nothing more than just talk about the little things that had brought us together and how lost she would be without me because of her mother dying of alcoholic encephalopathy 2 years into our initial relationship. We just talk and talk and talk, and I try not to think of her as a kid who has terminal cancer who will die in 3 months but wants to be a ballerina when she grows up. In the corner of my eye I glance over at the TV and it says 11:59 p.m. and my heart sinks down to my feet. I've learned to be cautiously optimistic, like when you get a scratch-off ticket and you purposely get 2 matching win $1,000 a month for the rest of your life, but you know the third will never come. So as Kathy continues to talk, I block her out and just count down in my head from 1 to 60. By the time I got to 37, I said, "Holy shit, Kathy, it's 12 a.m., it's March 19th. Then I ran around the house like a bloody fool while I checked on her every 5 seconds to make sure she was still alive. About 8 weeks later I figured out what got us out of March 18th when Kathy surprised me with a positive pregnancy test. I couldn't believe that to get her pregnant was to get us to March 19th. Fast forward 3 months and as fate would have it, nothing can ever end that well. It seemed like I was destined to get Kathy pregnant because I had a ticking time bomb within my body. I was just diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor and I have elected to forego treatment and will subsequently die in a matter of weeks. My last testament to Kathy was our child, and now she won't be alone." End of story. That is all for today. If you want to support my automated channel, feel free to drop a like and subscribe. See you tomorrow.